I still remember the sound of the elevator that morning, a soft metallic sigh, like the building itself was tired of keeping secrets. I was on my way to work, coffee in one hand, car keys in the other, when my neighbor Mrs. Whitaker stepped out from the corner of the hallway. She was the kind of woman who always looked ready for an occasion. Her silver hair was pulled into a neat twist, her lipstick too red for 9 in the morning. "Clara," she said pleasantly, her eyes sharp behind her glasses, "do you mind if I ask you something?" I smiled politely. "Of course, what's on your mind?" Her tone softened, but her words landed like stones. "Do you know who comes into your apartment every Tuesday afternoon?" For a second, I thought she was joking. I even laughed a little. "I'm sorry, what?" Mrs. Whitaker tilted her head, studying my face. "I have a clear view of your door from my balcony. Every Tuesday around 1 o'clock, someone unlocks it and goes inside. I assumed it was a friend or a cleaner, but you might want to check." Her voice was calm, almost gentle, but it made my stomach tighten. "That can't be right," I said, forcing a smile. "No one has a key except my husband and me." "Well," she said, pressing the elevator button, "then I suppose it must be one of you." The elevator doors opened with a low chime, and she stepped inside, leaving me standing in the hallway with her words echoing in my head. All day at the office I couldn't focus. The numbers on my screen blurred into meaningless shapes. Every time the clock ticked toward 1, I pictured my door opening to someone unseen. By the time I got home, my pulse was racing. The apartment looked exactly the same as I'd left it. The faint scent of lavender, the mail neatly stacked, the framed photos perfectly aligned on the wall. I walked from room to room, searching for something, anything that felt out of place. Nothing did. Ed. That night over dinner, I told Robert what Mrs. Whitaker had said. He didn't even look up from his plate. "She's always been nosy," he said. "Don't let her get in your head." Maybe he was right, maybe it was just gossip, but when I lay in bed later staring into the dark, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone had been there. Somewhere beyond the thin walls and the quiet hum of the city, a secret was waiting for me to find it. By the next morning, Mrs. Whitaker's words still echoed in my mind. I tried to brush it off, but a quiet unease followed me through the day. During lunch, I caught myself scrolling through security camera ads online. Small, wireless, motion-activated. "Cheap peace of mind," the description said. That night, I ordered one. When it arrived 2 days later, I hid it on a bookshelf near the entryway, angled toward the front door. It was so small that even I had to squint to spot it. I told myself it was just a precaution, nothing serious. But deep down, I already feared what it might show. Tuesday came faster than expected. I left for work as usual, coffee in hand, trying to ignore the pounding in my chest. The day dragged by. I checked my phone a dozen times, counting the hours until I could look. When I finally got home that evening, my hands trembled as I unlocked the door. The apartment felt still too still. I set my purse down, poured a glass of water, and opened the camera app. There it was, a single motion alert, 1:14 p.m. My throat went dry. I pressed play. The door opened slowly. Someone stepped inside, confident and calm. For a moment I couldn't breathe. Then she moved into the light, and I saw her face. Sophie. My daughter-in-law. Her blonde hair was tied neatly, her clothes casual. She looked around the apartment like she belonged there. She walked straight to the bedroom, opened my dresser drawer, and placed a small white envelope inside. Then she took a bottle of my perfume from the vanity, sprayed it once into the air, smiled faintly, and left. The video ended. I sat frozen, staring at the screen, my heart hammering. What was she doing here? Why would she come when I wasn't home? I played the video again, and again, each time catching new details: the way she checked the hallway before entering, how she never hesitated. By the third replay, I wasn't shocked anymore. I was cold. That night, I didn't tell Robert. I didn't tell anyone. I simply locked every door, sat in the dark living room, and whispered to myself, "She has a reason for this, and I'm going to find out what it is." The next morning, I woke before sunrise. I couldn't stop thinking about that envelope Sophie had left in my drawer. Every part of me wanted to run straight there and open it, but I forced myself to move slowly, to breathe, to act normal. Robert was still asleep when I slipped out of bed and walked quietly to the bedroom dresser. The drawer creaked softly as I pulled it open. My heart pounded. It was empty. The envelope was gone. I stood there for a long moment, staring at the smooth, empty space where it had been. There wasn't even a trace of paper dust or a fold mark. Someone had come back. All day, I couldn't shake the thought. At work, my fingers moved automatically on the keyboard while my mind replayed every frame of that video. Sophie's calm smile, her deliberate movements. It hadn't been random. When I came home that night, the apartment looked as spotless as ever, but it no longer felt like mine. Every sound the refrigerator hummed, the clock ticking felt like an intrusion. At dinner, I told Robert again about what Mrs. Whitaker had said. This time I even mentioned that I'd installed a camera. His reaction was instant. He set his fork down and frowned. "Clara, you're letting this get to you. You've been stressed. You're seeing patterns where there aren't any." I looked at him carefully. "So you think it's all in my head?" He sighed. "I think you need rest, not mystery stories." Then he smiled, the kind of tired smile people use to end a conversation. I didn't argue. I just nodded, pretending to accept it. But inside, something shifted. If I was truly imagining things, why did he sound so defensive? Why didn't he ask to see the video? That night I sat at my desk and opened a new notebook. On the first page I wrote in neat letters. Tuesday 1:14 p.m. Intruder identified, Sophie Reed. Envelope placed, then removed. Below it, I added one more line. Possible second key in use. Unknown source. Then I closed the notebook, placed it in the nightstand, and whispered to myself, if I'm crazy, then I'll be the kind of crazy that keeps records. By the next week, my fear had hardened into something sharper focus. I told Robert I wasn't feeling well and planned to work from home on Tuesday. He kissed my cheek and left early, never noticing the small second camera I'd hidden behind the bookshelf facing the hallway. When the clock struck 1, I turned off the lights and waited in the bedroom, heart pounding so hard I could hear it. The silence was thick, almost electric. At exactly 1:12 p.m., I heard the faint click of the lock. I held my breath. Through the narrow crack in the bedroom door, I saw her, Sophie, same soft pink sweater, same calm steps. She closed the door behind her, set down her purse, and walked directly toward the dresser as if she owned the place. She opened the same drawer as before and placed something inside a small envelope again. Then she stood there for a moment, her back to me. I could see her reflection in the mirror. She smiled faintly, sprayed perfume into the air, and whispered something I couldn't hear. After a few seconds, she left. The moment the door closed, I counted to 30, then rushed to the dresser. My hands shook as I opened the drawer. Inside was a photo, an old one from a family barbecue 10 years ago. Robert and Sophie standing too close, his hand on her shoulder. I remembered that day. I had been in the kitchen, laughing with Michael while they stood by the grill. On the back of the photo, written in neat handwriting, "Some things never change. I sat on the edge of the bed, the photo trembling in my hands. It wasn't a mistake. It was a message. That evening, I drove across town to see my friend Janet. She was a lawyer who handled estate cases and always seemed to know when to stay quiet. Over tea, I told her part of the truth, that someone had been entering my home without permission. Janet frowned. "If you've got evidence, keep collecting it. Don't confront them yet. People who cross lines like that don't expect to be watched." Her words sank deep. On the drive home, I didn't turn on the radio. The city lights blurred past my windshield as I gripped the steering wheel. They thought I was blind, but I was watching now, and soon I'd make them see what I saw. By the following morning, I knew what I had to do. Fear had kept me still long enough. Now it became fuel. The first thing I did was call a locksmith. While Robert was at work, a man arrived and replaced the old deadbolt with a new one. I told him it was for peace of mind, and he didn't ask questions. When he left, I stood by the door, turning the key in my hand, feeling the weight of control for the first time in weeks. Next came the money. At the bank, my hands barely trembled as I asked to separate my portion of the joint account. Personal reasons, I told the clerk. Within half an hour, I had a new debit card and a new account, mine alone. Then I made copies of everything, the videos, the photos, even screenshots of Robert's text messages where he mentioned meetings that never appeared on his calendar. I saved them to a flash drive and labeled it Tuesday Files. Another copy went into a password-protected folder on my laptop. That evening I cooked dinner as if nothing had changed. Robert walked in, smiling faintly, talking about work. When he noticed the new lock, his eyebrows lifted. "When did that happen?" There were some issues with the old one, I said lightly. The building manager recommended a change. He hesitated for a moment, then nodded. You should have told me. You were busy, I replied. We ate in silence. The clink of silverware was the only sound between us. He looked tired but not guilty, at least, not yet. He believed he was still the one in control. Later, as he watched television, I sat beside him, pretending to scroll through my phone. In reality, I was making notes, dates, times, small inconsistencies. Every line needed a timestamp. I didn't feel angry anymore. I felt precise, steady, patient. Before bed, I looked at the calendar on the wall. Tuesday was circled in red ink. Tomorrow I would see what happened when the rules changed, and I was no longer the one being watched. The invitation came the next morning. A text from Sophie, sweet, casual, perfectly timed. Dinner tomorrow night at our place. Just family. Let's clear the air. I stared at the message for a long time before replying, of course. I'll be there. When I told Robert, he seemed relieved. Good, he said. It's time we all stop this nonsense. Nonsense. That was his word for betrayal. The next evening, I arrived at their house right on time. Sophie greeted me at the door, her smile bright, her eyes calculating. She wore a soft blue dress, and the smell of her perfume, the same one from my bedroom, hit me like a wave. Clara, she said warmly, I'm so glad you came. Inside, the table was set for 4. Candles flickered, wine glasses shimmered. Michael was already seated, looking cheerful but slightly tense. Mom, he said, standing to hug me. It's good to see you. Robert poured wine for everyone, trying too hard to seem normal. Let's all relax, he said. No more suspicion, no more secrets. For a moment we played our parts, the polite smiles, the meaningless small talk. Sophie laughed at something Robert said, touching his arm lightly. My stomach turned. When dessert was served, I placed my fork down and looked at Robert. Maybe you should read that email, I said quietly. He blinked. What email? The one you wrote to Sophie, I replied. The one you never sent. The room went still. Michael's hand froze halfway to his glass. Sophie's face lost its color. Robert's lips parted, searching for words, but I continued. I quoted softly, I think we should slow down. She's starting to notice. Silence, only the faint hiss of the candle. Michael looked between us, confusion turning to realization. Dad, what is she talking about? No one answered. I stood slowly, my chair scraping against the floor. You both should be more careful, I said. Deleting something doesn't mean it's gone. Then I turned to Michael. You deserve to know the truth. I'll leave you to hear it from them. And with that, I walked out, leaving behind the scent of spilled wine and a room full of ghosts who finally had nowhere to hide. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat by the window watching the city lights fade into dawn, feeling the strange calm that comes after a storm. By morning, I had already called Janet. My voice didn't shake when I said it's time. Over the next few weeks, everything moved fast. Janet gathered the evidence, videos, photos, emails, bank statements. She was quiet but relentless, a woman who understood that truth only matters when it's documented. Robert tried to reach me several times, but I didn't answer. He sent flowers, texts, even left a note on my car windshield. We can talk about this. I wasn't interested in talking anymore. When the court date arrived, I wore a simple black suit and tied my hair back. No jewelry, no expression, just composure. Robert's lawyer spoke first, painting me as unstable, a paranoid wife who imagined things. Janet waited patiently before standing. She placed a folder on the judge's desk and opened it. These, she said, are timestamps from Mrs. Benson's home camera. The footage shows the same individual, Mrs. Sophie Reed, entering her residence multiple times without consent. The envelope, the perfume, the photograph, each event verified. The judge leaned forward, studying the images. Robert avoided my eyes. Sophie sat 2 rows behind him, her face pale, her hands twisting in her lap. Then came the email. Janet handed over the printed draft Robert had written to Sophie. Would you confirm this is yours? She asked. Robert hesitated, then whispered, yes. That one word ended it all. The ruling came swiftly, full ownership of the apartment to me, half of all shared assets, and a restraining order against both of them. When I walked out of the courthouse, the sky was bright and cold. Reporters waited by the steps, but I didn't stop. I just kept walking, my heels clicking against the pavement, steady and deliberate. For the first time in months, I wasn't chasing the truth anymore, I was standing in it. 6 months have passed since that day in court, and my life feels different now, quiet, deliberate, mine again. The apartment that once felt like a cage has become a sanctuary. I open the windows every morning, let the city breeze drift through the curtains, and make coffee at exactly 1 o'clock each Tuesday. It started as habit, but now it's a ritual, a reminder of what I survived. Robert moved out of state not long after the trial. Word spread that he lost his job, something about financial discrepancies the company couldn't ignore. Sophie, I heard, stayed in town for a while but eventually left too. Someone mentioned she was working in real estate. I don't keep track. My son Michael visits often now. At first, he struggled to look me in the eye, torn between love and disappointment. But over time, the tension faded. We cook dinner together, talk about work, sometimes sit in silence. That silence used to hurt. Now it feels like healing. Mrs. Whitaker still lives 2 floors up. Occasionally she stops by for tea and her quiet, knowing smile. One afternoon she said, "You finally cleaned house, didn't you?" I smiled back. Yes, completely. I've started teaching writing classes at the community center on weekends, mostly for women rebuilding their lives after divorce or loss. We talk about truth, boundaries, and how to turn pain into something useful. They don't know my full story, but I see recognition in their eyes. Sometimes when I walk past the mirror, I barely recognize myself either. The woman staring back isn't frightened or fragile. She's calm, grounded, free. Last week, as I left my apartment, I ran into Mrs. Whitaker again. She looked at me with that same spark in her eyes and said softly, "They never expect women like us to win." I laughed quietly. Then they should start learning. As I locked the door behind me, the sound was clean and final. No ghosts, no fear. Just the echo of peace filling the space where betrayal used to live. Tuesday has become my favorite day.